So hey, this is Jackie Lukeman. I don't know why I keep doing live streams and introducing myself like you don't know who I am by now. But anyway, this is Jackie Lukeman, and we're still here at the Robert E. Lee Memorial, and we are seriously just kind of hanging out, having like a really cool. We told you we were gonna have some conversations with some of those like-minded people, and we are. So we met our sister here, so you know who I am, so now we need to know who you are. And where are you from?
I am from Norfolk, Virginia. I went to VCU and I've been in Richmond ever since.
So, why did you come out here today?
I just wanted to see what was what, really.
Just set up last night.
Wherever direction it's going to go in, I'm with it. I don't like to talk and just post and stuff like that. Right. I'm not a big talker, so I wanted to be out here and show support. Honestly, I thought it was going to be, like I was just saying, like I thought it was going to be just like the Monument March.
Those things in the middle of Monument Avenue.
How did they call it? Or else?
Oh, Justice or Else?
Justice
Yeah.
Or else, I thought it was going to be just like that. I thought it was going to be this. Just a bunch of friendly people on one side talking about being friendly. Like, there's so many no hate signs, progressive people out here. So I thought that's what it was going to be. I honestly, it's more of us.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I didn't think it was really going to be. Nobody's really with that.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna let it go. Like those T-shirts say, "I'm not my ancestors." You know, sincerely, these hands, stuff like that. You know, like
hands.
we're not really for all of that. So that's what it is. So I just walked with people, had the conversations, took some pictures, got a lot of selfie action going on.
Yeah. Yes, we got some selfie action going on. I mean, part of the reason, like I said earlier, we come to these things is to support our brothers and sisters. You know, we don't live in Richmond. My family still lives in Jarrett. We live in D.C. But we don't know. We're kind of hanging out to see. Yeah. And we're just kind of hanging out. But so anyway, there's a rumor that there's supposed to be another group coming at 1 o'clock. Why? I don't know. But yeah, that's why part of the reason why we're all still here. But the other reason we're all still here is really just because it's cool to be around like-minded people who are in the same fight, down for the same struggle. And this is how you build network, right? You might be in an area where you don't know a whole lot of people who are even vocal about this issue on either side, and you might feel uncomfortable talking about it. Until, you come out to a public event like this and you meet some people that you can connect with and develop a relationship with. Not just to do, social activist things with, but really to make connections with. Because none of us goes through this fight alone, y'all, and none of us are getting out. None of us are getting out of this without each other's help. We can't do this by ourselves. I mean, if there's anything that being black has taught me, it's that we can't get anything done in this country by ourselves. We can raise a lot of noise and raise a lot of hell, but we need allies and comrades. And that's just true because of sheer numbers. And like we were talking about earlier on our first stream this morning, nobody has to develop some conspiracy to kill black people. They just do it. They just do it. Walk into a courthouse and get the judge to say, well, I think the police were fearing for their lives, so I think it's just fine to find them not guilty. Nobody needs to fabricate this elaborate conspiracy to kill black people. It's just done. And the system is set up to allow it to be done.
So Jackie, if I can, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Considering that I'll explain about the way that the protest is being handled, the police interaction, and how that interaction in Richmond sort of mirrors the police interaction with the protesters out in St. Louis.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've seen the video that we shared on our Twitter feed this morning. I think it should have showed up on the Facebook feed of the St. Louis police. It's one particular incident. The St. Louis police were marching on some protesters in the middle of the street. There was an elderly white lady out there being John Brown, for real. Just being John Brown, protesting injustice. And the police literally trampled that woman. And there were two other white guys who were behind her, and they were trying to pick her up. And the police maced those two guys who were trying to help this older white lady. And then they arrested the two white guys, and then the police that were in the second line arrested the older white lady. The protest last night in St. Louis, into early this morning, the police were kind of walking along the protesters, letting them go wherever they went. And we're not stupid. We don't go out into the street just because we don't have anything better to do that day. People were out in the streets because they were angry at the injustice. So people were going to a specific place. They went to the mayor's house. They weren't just wandering around the streets of St. Louis without direction. No, they went to the mayor's house. And everything was, people were marching and the police were fine. And then, people started breaking the windows out of the mayor's house. I'm not mad at that. Not going to condemn it. Don't look for me to. But of course, then the narrative becomes, oh my God, the protesters are violent. Violence is what caused people to come out of their houses and march through the streets of St. Louis all night long. Violence that has been unaddressed and unmitigated against unarmed black and brown women and men for centuries is why, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you, sis. Yeah, the violence without any consequences that have been inflicted upon unarmed black and brown people for centuries, and now it's being done to other people. That's why people are out in the streets. But of course, the media narrative is the violence of protesters breaking the mayor's with the windows out in the mayor's house. So contrast the heavy-handed, at first the hands-off approach from the police in St. Louis to all of a sudden, because some windows are broken, now the police are shooting rubber bullets at people and trampling old ladies in the middle of the street, to what's going on here, where clearly the mayor did not want a repeat of Charlottesville. Because, I don't know if you saw earlier, it was really hard to show you because this memorial is really big. And it's really hard to see on the other side of the memorial in the little park. And there were literally like 5 or 6 pro-Confederate protesters over there, and there was a bunch of counter-protesters on the other side. And the pro-Confederates actually had to come through here to get back to their vehicle, and they were escorted by like 2 lines of cops in riot gear. I mean, you gonna come out here and declare your allegiance to the Confederacy, but you need the cops to take you back to your car? Okay.
Now let me ask both of you ladies a question.
Yes.
Considering that this is sort of like after Charlottesville, and now we have this here. Does it offend any of you that our elected leaders are not present?
You're not even praying.
Why would I expect any change? Like, the change is with the people.
Right.
We're going to dictate what they do. You know what I mean? So, I bet you something pop up, they be out here.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, like, here it is, another election cycle, and then they're going to be, especially, let's make it more specific with black people. These same politicians are going to come to our churches. They're going to come, they're going to come to the cookout. They're going to do all of these things to try to shore up black votes. And then, but once again, is that when we're in the midst of these type of struggles, then they're, then they're absent. And what I'm saying is that what do you ladies think should be the next step? Like, we can't just leave it here at protesting. Like, what agenda should be able to come out of this?
Well, the next step needs to be all these people need to show up at the next city council meeting for that is going to happen. Phil, he's recruiting somebody else. But there's a city council meeting that's coming up where the issue of these monuments and the recognition of the entire Shockoe Bottom Memorial Slave site, Lumpkins Jail, and the slave burial ground is going to come up at the next city council meeting for Richmond. Everybody who came out today needs to show up at that city council meeting and demand that not only that this statue comes down and every other one, on Monument Avenue and throughout the city, that's a monument to the Confederacy, but to preserve and erect monuments to Africans and our ancestors and their descendants who fought for freedom, and then address the systemic issues that Black people in Richmond still face because of this legacy that these statues are symbols of. You know, Phil and Anna talk all the time about the problems with violence in the poorest areas of the city. We interviewed them a while ago, and they talked about how Richmond closed the last trailer park in the city, and that severely impacted a huge community of poor Latino people who because their homes are taken away, now they have nowhere to go. That was the last step before homelessness for them. You know, everybody, it's great that we can all come out here and have a wonderful, you know, moment of solidarity, but this can't be the only place that we show solidarity. We got to show up at these politicians' offices. They need to get phone calls from us. They need to get emails. They all have social media profiles. They need to get trolled on social media for what they're not doing. When they come to our churches, for those of us who are of the faith, stop being scared of your pastor and stand up when these people are standing in their pulpit and lying about what they're going to do. Call them on that. You know, we have to, I believe that we can't continue to trust these elected officials who won't come out here and support us in these moments, but then right before an election, like you said, hon, they want to come to the cookout, they want a plate in exchange for some votes. Mm-hmm. And they don't, I'm just saying, you don't get a plate, you don't get votes until you make a commitment. And if you got to get it in writing, we get it in writing.
Now, yesterday, Dr. Jason Nichols, he did a stream where he said that we should not get in the habit. He took a personal stance where he said that he was no longer going to debate white supremacists because that lends them a certain legitimacy that he believed that they shouldn't have. Now, we're down here today and we're waiting. There's rumors going around that some group's supposed to show up. What I'm saying is the fact that the conversation has to be broader than confronting CSA or confronting the daughters of the Confederacy or the children of the Confederacy or the dogs of the Confederacy. You know, I mean, the conversation has to be broader. So, because we have other issues. We have Fight for 15, worker rights groups. We have women rights groups. And so, because the mainstream media, they have a tendency to reduce the narrative down to, it's us versus them. It's, the Confederates versus the anti-Confederates or the alt-right and all this stuff. So, try to expound on what is the broader conversation here, because there has to be a broader conversation. This can't be, we can't allow the media to reduce it down to like worldwide wrestling.
What happened best is, I think, to be honest, for me and everyone I associate with, that's my age anyway, it's good that y'all are out here and that y'all are talking and y'all know, the next steps that need to be taken. Because like you said, we're through with all the peaceful stuff that the steps we're supposed to take hasn't worked. We've come somewhere, but there's always another obstacle or another reminder that you're not worth nothing. So it's like, we just out here to be as one. But you're right, like it needs to be more past this, and then it needs to, so we can change policy and whatnot. And for people like me, like I don't know all of that stuff. And I don't even know where to go find that information. I'm sure I can just go on Google and the internet has everything, but I don't even know a lot of that stuff. But I really feel like it's up to people before us. Everyone that's older than us, like it needs to be a direction.
Right, exactly.
Because we got all this energy. Like y'all want to be out here for 2 more years doing this.
Right, exactly.
Y'all should be able to kick your feet up and know that y'all pass the torch on to somebody that's gonna keep it going. So. I mean, but what needs to change, really, we just need more information. But if somebody is not just preaching, you know what I mean? Like, I need somebody that's out here, like, y'all out here, y'all willing. You know what I mean? Y'all ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I feel like we need direction because we got all the energy and we ready and nothing has happened to me personally, like, you know what I mean? But if it does, then I'm gonna get involved. Let's be involved from jump.
Right,
Yes.
exactly.
Jump.
Yes.
People were talking about, oh, be in the school system or whatever. You're gonna be in it. They come marching down your street.
That's right.
You better be out here. Let's stop it at the beginning.
That's right.
That's right. That's right.
So it's just direction. Like, we really about the action right now.
And you know what? I respect the hell out of that because
I do too.
I mean, like we just did the conference and we just talked about how, look, this generation, our generation, we tired. I mean,
Look, I had to get off my feet. I was holding the sign. I had to
He's
get
over
off
there
my
holding
feet.
the banner. His feet hurt. I'm up there holding the banner. My feet hurt. You know, we've got to pass the torch to the next generation.
You hear that, Al Sharpton? Pass the torch.
You know, we can't just take the check and be like, I can go home with my check because I did my work. We have to be out here passing the torch because we can't assume that not everybody understands the stuff that we understand. They can't because they haven't lived what we've lived. So we have to be out here having these conversations. But the broader conversation has to also be, this is about white supremacy and racism and anti-black racism and discrimination in particular, but it also affects all of you. Because it affects all of you because the system that's now screwing all of you was built on anti-black racism and white supremacy. It was built off of and it grew power from the free and forced labor of black people. This country existed with the wealth and the power that it has because our ancestors were forced to work for free to produce goods and services that they were not compensated for, and they and their offspring were products themselves, had a value, a monetary value, but no human value. And that happened to our ancestors for 268 years, 2.5 centuries. And that's never been really fully addressed. The descendants of those people have never been compensated. The legislation that has been passed that was supposed to level the playing field was never really written to actually level the playing field, and it was never fully enforced, and it's been resisted, and it has been trying to be. There have been people who have been trying to dismantle that legislation, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Education Act, all of the legislation that came out of the turbulent 60s and the Civil Rights Movement. The day that legislation was signed, people were fighting to dismantle it. We've never had a break. We've never had rest in this country. But while so many white people have been convinced that we're the problem, that we just want handouts and that we're just whining, the people who were fighting to dismantle those rights, they've been coming after you. They've also been passing laws to curtail the rights of gay Americans. They've also been passing laws to make it easier for corporations that employ you to take more of your money, to pay you, to give you fewer benefits, and to make you feel guilty for taking a vacation, working you to death for less money. They're the same people who will tell you that, look, all these people who want affordable housing, they're just lazy and they don't want to work. At the same time, they're hiking up your interest rates and they're making it harder for you to get a mortgage. So while they've been making us the scapegoat and they've been convincing you that you need to vote for them because they're going to protect you from us, they've been stealing from you. And that, white supremacy, that's the system that white supremacy was built on.
So it reminds me of what Tim Wise, the very famous anti-racist, said, is that,
Okay.
all right, said basically that white supremacy is rich white men telling poor non-whites who their enemy is.
Yep. And the enemy has always been from from the day this country decided, from the day the land-owning, wealthy white men in this country decided we can't let poor white people and poor black people get together because they'll take our stuff, the enemy has always been us. So
thank you, sister, for joining us. Well, we got our marching orders.
Yeah,
So,
we can't lose our group.
Yeah.
This ground is so comfy.
All right, so we got to go, but we'll be checking back out with you.
Yep. See y'all.